It seems like it's on now, right? Okay. Well, thank you for coming back to this session. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. It's very good. And so let's continue with our discussion here, but we're going to talk a little more about how to go about assessing your curriculum to make sure that it is culturally responsive. And so as I think I mentioned earlier, culturally responsive education sort of has its roots back in the 1990s, uh, where there were a couple of researchers, Gloria Lansing-Billings, who really termed the phrase culturally relevant pedagogy. And then Geneva Gay, who recently retired from the University of Washington and is sort of on a touring circuit to talk about culturally responsive education, uh, developed some strategies that went deeper into that. But really, culturally responsive education is sort of putting aside the common sort of dominant worldviews and developing and encouraging your students to embrace multiple perspectives so that, later on I will show you a slide developed by an amazing writer. Some of you people from the English department may be familiar with her. She's originally from Nigeria. And she did a TED talk that I'll mention later, but her whole emphasis on that was not just hearing one story, but hearing multiple stories. And so, I talked about some of the outcomes associated with culturally responsive education. And then I heard somebody mention here when we went through that activity at the very beginning that I think, was it you? Mentioned motivation, that they just weren't motivated by the material. Well, one of the most significant outcomes of culturally responsive education is motivation. It's a way to motivate your students. And so we've, Marjorie Ginsburg, we've actually had conversations with her. She's one of the leading researchers on adult education, but adult education as it ties to culturally responsive education. And originally we were planning to bring her and some other researchers here and have multiple presentations. As things evolved and as we started planning that, COVID hit and sort of put everything on hold. And then when we regrouped, we decided to sort of narrow the focus of our professional development down and condense it further and even do it by over Zoom as much as we could so that more people would be able to participate, especially on a Friday if they want to sit at home and join in. Well, that would be fine. So, but really, Marjorie Ginsburg really made the connection to motivation. And if, students in you may look out into your classroom, hopefully not, but this group, but you can imagine teachers looking out, and I've probably been guilty of this when I was a teacher. I look out and I see those blank faces, and you're always wondering, well, what are they thinking? Are they just totally turned off? Are they listening? What is exactly happening? So, culturally, tying your curriculum content really is a way to motivate students because they have a connection to it. Okay, we also had a discussion with Alicia Chavez. She's at the University of New Mexico, and Susan Longerbeam, who is at University of Louisville. And they really promote this idea of teaching across cultural strengths. So, how you have a new group of students coming in your classroom. How are you going to go about identifying their cultural strengths? Especially with our changing, if you've been teaching a while, like I've been in education for so long, I don't want to admit it, but I started when I was 21. Um, how do you, with our changing population and over the years, I recall even being a student in 6th grade at Solvang Elementary School, because I grew up here locally. There was one person in my class that had a Hispanic background. The teacher, I used to be embarrassed sitting in the class because I would sit there imagining how she felt being the only one. But then I felt really sort of embarrassed for the teacher, for her and everybody, because the teacher would point her out as being somebody special. She was treated as somebody special, not special, different. And I just couldn't imagine how that made her feel. Then I went on to Dos Pueblos High School in Goleta. Back in that school opened in 1966, and I was there when that school opened. There was one black kid in the whole school, and I thought that it was a whole different environment for that student. Maybe I don't know why. I know she was one of my best friends then, but I didn't notice that anybody treated her differently. So I started wondering, well, what's the difference between that situation at Solvang Elementary and the situation where it could have been that I didn't realize the kind of feelings that person had, or the kind of perception she may have had about the way she was treated. But generally, I thought it was a sort of night and day between both environments. Yeah. Yeah. So multicultural strengths. Okay. So yeah. So I think when they talk about cultural strengths, is what cultural aspect of a student's background is most important to them. Yeah, what's strong in their culture that they can identify with. So as a teacher, and I think I started down this road of asking you the question, how do you go about finding that out? And I recall, let's get some input here, yeah. They live it. Yeah, and that's really important. What do people value? And that's an interesting question in itself, because in different cultures, one value may not be the same as in another value, and I'll give you an example. So there is an indigenous tribe that lives along the Amazon River. So if you left your purse sitting on this desk, saying somebody came by and picked it up, and they walked out the door with it, how would you term that with our value system and within our culture? It's theft. It's stealing. Yeah. So in their culture, you leave your purse there, it means you no longer value it. You no longer need it. So it is there for anybody to take, and they do not view that as stealing. So those are the kind of things, those are the kind of connections that you need to make with your students to find out what they value. And I think you were exactly right, Tina. In trying to identify cultural strengths, you have to identify value, what are the cultural values? Okay. Now, there's another researcher that we didn't connect with, but we're very familiar with her work, and that's Zaretta Hammond. And I mentioned her previously because she does brain research, and really has found that culturally responsive education really helps promote cognitive thinking, improves the cognitive skills, higher order thinking skills. That's really important because, as you all know, those are skills that are transferable across anything that anybody does in life. So that's one reason why this is so important. And so, you know, I think often, and I know nobody in here is guilty of it because otherwise you probably wouldn't be here, but so often in classrooms, you know, the teacher takes and it was mentioned by Dr. Wood, teachers take a deficit view of culturally diverse and minoritized students. They take a deficit view of them, and when that happens, I mean, you can imagine how that has a really negative impact on that student. So taking a culturally responsive approach to education really allows students to, what Dr. Hammond is saying is that students they need a foundation on which to build on. Those critical thinking skills, cognitive skills, they need a foundation, and that foundation is culture. And they use that in order to keep building those skills. And that that the more they can build those skills, because they are transferable, the more success they can have in an educational environment.
If they're reading and learning about something that they haven't experienced, then there becomes a disconnect. And so already they're farther behind than those who have experienced or know what you're talking about and have been there, seen it, experienced it.
Okay, so I think this is just what Leanne mentioned, that it's also a way to engage students into the learning that you expect them to know. Okay, yeah. So this is the person that I mentioned, and I have to apologize because I cannot really pronounce her name. Shamanda, and then I get lost there. But she's an amazing person. If you aren't familiar with her work or if you haven't heard her speak, she is just amazing. But there is a TED Talk here listed, and if anybody is interested in these slides, we'll certainly share these with you. But there's an amazing TED Talk where she talks about coming from Nigeria and wondering how she was able to come to this country and then develop a view that was different than her own. And she talked about even in Nigeria, some of the kind of perceptions of her teachers having toward her, first because she was female, and then, of course, in Nigeria, where most people are black, but that basically that women couldn't succeed. Coming to America, where she was able to develop more view, sort of move away from a single view about things to multiple views. And she talked about it as having sort of as a single story. In Nigeria, she knew a single story that was told to her. When she's come to America, she was able to experience multiple stories that were told from different kinds of viewpoints, different kind of angles, and so forth. And so I think her presentation really sort of emphasizes the importance of culturally responsive education, and because it is all about opening the mind to different perspectives, different possibilities, and really letting students know that their own personal story is important, and to encourage them then to view the multiple stories from everybody else. Because this is culturally responsive education isn't just for culturally diverse and minoritized students. It is for everybody. And along with encouraging your more diverse student population to to open their minds to multiple perspectives, it's also important to have everybody in your class do that also.
Okay, and I know you've seen this slide. We're going back to our instrument here. But I did want to share something, kind of piggyback on what Rick was just saying about the danger of not saying multiple stories, how multiple eyes see the same event, right? One quick life experience I had, I was a elementary school teacher. I was getting my specialized credential for the cultural and linguistic diverse advocate for diverse classrooms, and part of that is going to school in another country. And so I went and did a university semester in central Mexico. And I was living in San Francisco. I had been on my own since I was 16. I was 26 at the time. And I was, single, free, independent, and getting my education. And I lived in a household of women who, none of the women worked. They all raised their children, and they, took care of the family. And I was leaving in the morning. They'd make me breakfast, and we'd all eat together, and I'd leave and go to school. Then I'd come back for the comida, and then and resting, and then I'd go back to class. And then on my way back home from class, I would pick up the pan and have it bring in some tamales and bring it home for the cena, right? So, and in my American mind, I was thinking, these poor women, they don't even get to pursue their education. I was like in my American mindset, right? And we would talk late into the night sometimes. And one of them said, what's it like? What is your life like? And when I started describing it, I didn't want to be braggy about how awesome it was to be so independent and be able to make my own money and my own rules and my own times. And I had not a care in the world yet, right? Because they were very perplexed because I was so old for not even settling down yet. And but the reality was when I started saying, I was trying to be so sensitive that I actually got into a different part of my mind, and it might have been that I'd already been living there for over a month and a half or so. And I said that what I exchanged for my independence is my right as a mother. So what I'm giving up is the thing that I'm looking the most forward to as a woman. Me personally, I'm not saying all women feel that way, right? And when I said that, and I said, to make it even worse, I'm an elementary school teacher. So I don't get to care for my own child because I'm raising everybody else's child. And I don't get to, their teachers get to spend more time with them than I do. And when I said that, I was like, oh my gosh, the exchange that I've made, right? And it's not to say that one side or the other is right or wrong, or better or worse. But there's definitely different sides of the same situation and different ways to view it. And I came back here and changed my entire life. I went and got my master's degree through a reform project, grant funded, and with the intent to be able to work at night to raise my kids. So until I had that degree and I could work at a university, I wasn't going to have kids. So I could raise them and kind of have my cake and eat it too, which was exhausting, as most of you probably know. But back to this. So I just wanted to, we all have these stories. And when you start taking a step back to listen and hear each other and hear how the same thing can be seen so differently, that's where we're getting at. And that the world of connection and the world of becoming a social justice champion begins with the heart of knowledge like that. So back to this instrument that will hopefully guide our curriculum modifications. We went over these, so I think that we can go to the next slide. This is what the instrument looks like. And like I said, it starts kind of surfacey, really tangible. Like you can literally count How many diverse individuals do I see showing up in my curriculum, right? So you can literally go down the line and count them up. So it's very tangible. It's something that you can really put your hands on. Bless you. And then, so that's like the first step, is to look at the demographics of your students and look at the percentage of the students' cultures and people like them that show up in your curriculum. Yes. I I just think that if you have it in the back of your mind, I think that we're very Christian oriented. And so if you just have it into the back of your mind, I'm not asking people to pry, but there are different religions that do exist. And this is a very Christian Catholic community that we live in, but it doesn't mean that there aren't other religion people. There's also Buddhists in our culture, and there's Buddhist temples here in churches. There's Jewish people in our population, and there's synagogues here. We could go, there's Muslims, we just have to be conscious. It's kind of about being conscious of, in your curriculum, are you presenting other views? Because otherwise we just make assumptions about what other people believe and are doing. Yeah. Oh. Sorry, I just realized.
No, that's okay.
They can't hear you.
No, of course, sorry. I noticed that I specifically, I try to remove too much identifiers, because I really don't want them to necessarily, maybe this is entirely wrong, you have to tell me. I don't want students to constantly be thinking, am I part of this group or am I not part of this? Do I apply to this, do I not? That's, in a lot of my examples, I specifically just did one on the ages of trees, was my example, because I didn't want it to feel like it related to people. And is that a move in the wrong direction? Is by removing these sort of, I guess, identifiers a disservice in the education that I'm trying to give to my students? Or should I go back and try to do more examples that specifically would try to pull out groups? I guess I just don't know.
Well, I'm not going to claim to have all the answers in the world. However, since we are talking about cultural responsiveness, and I do think that we're doing a disservice, like how I was raised. So my parents are both first-generation Americans, and how I was raised, when I'd ask them, what are we? They'd say, you're American. And I'd say, but you know what I mean. What are we? What's our race? You're American. And it was over and over, and it was like the big melting pot, because that's my age, 70s, right? My parents are super liberal. They met in India on a Peace Corps style role model for the Peace Corps mission from UCSB, and that's how they met. So, they were as PC as you got in the 70s. Okay? However, by blending everyone together, you're not recognizing that there is a difference. And that was the example that Dr. Luke Wood said about the rising tide. When you blend everyone together, you're not recognizing the fact that different people need different things. And that's the difference between equal treatment and equity. Right? You're giving the people what they need, and it's not, every person doesn't need the same thing.
So you mentioned that you changed your lesson to focus on a tree. Okay. What kind of tree was that? Was it a pine tree from up in the Sierras? Okay. So I'm just giving you a hint on how you might address that. How many students in your class were from Central America or Mexico? See, if you had a whole group that you knew for their background, their cultural background, you might have specified what kind of tree that was. And then that might have made a connection to that culture. Oh, I know that tree. I used to live there where they grew. See, and that's how you can make the cultural connection. Yeah. Yeah, go. Here, let's get you on.
So I teach math, and I've always had a hard time with applying cultural responsiveness, specifically to classes like algebra, calculus, where it's a lot of algebra based. Like, what are some suggestions for that situation?
Yeah. So anyway, thank you for that question. And you need to be in our next workshop because that's exactly what it focuses on. We're dividing our group into two sections. And one section is going to be focused on the STEM areas, and one will be focused on the humanities. But if you haven't signed up for our professional development and you would just like to attend that session, I think it'd be okay for you to attend because there'll be a lot of really great advice on how to go about doing that. And Janine?
I just had a question about the previous rubric. Thanks. So we're talking about the authors that are part of your curriculum, right? So how does women, girls, men, boys, girl authors? I don't understand how what that column refers to.
That was a good question.
Yeah. I want to make sure I understand your question, but is it just why is there a a difference between men and boys, or? Yeah, and so that's a good point. Maybe we'll think about changing that. I guess you could be reading a piece of literature written by a young person. Or there could be, definitely characters, authors, maybe not as much in higher education. Yeah.
My question was just a point of clarification too. Can you go back one slide, Rick? Because so when we were talking about diversity of individuals, I was thinking that you were talking, Leanne, about like kind of like authors, right? Like, are we showing this work? So about representations, either slides and photos, or what our curriculum was representing. But then your question made you were asking about like, well, how do I know if my student's non-Christian? So this is not assessing the students in our classroom. This is assessing the curriculum. Okay. Yeah. So that was a point of clarification because I think then we were talking about different things. Okay. Yeah.
So we're talking about the authors part, and I was lucky to be part of as we were revising the rubric and all this information. And so one of the things that came up in our discussion was that specifically in the subjects that are really hard to incorporate the cultural component within the curriculum. I remember we discussed about the authors about at least presenting like a bio of perhaps someone in the field that looks like your students, that you can represent the students, because oftentimes the books are defined, well, we're in America, so therefore the examples are these particular examples, but they're also scientists and mathematicians that are African American, they're Latino. And so that I believe that's what we try to address on that area.
And also remember, this is it starts off kind of surfacey. So representation is like the tangible kind of surfacey stuff you can touch. So it could even be the use of names and identifiers. I mean, not presenting every doctor as a white male in your word problem. I mean, that would just be one really, simple. So it can go into deeper levels, but these first two are like tallying up, and they're pretty tangible in representation. And I know I'm watching the clock, so I'm going to kind of, oh, that's okay, don't be sorry. And then the diversity of portrayals digs a little deeper, right? So it's kind of, there's a kind of a gradual depth through as you go through the instrument. So when you go through the diversity of portrayals, I know it's hard to read, right? No, it's hard to read. We just wanted to show you what it looked like. And so you're examining, like, I'll just read the first two since you guys can't read it from up there. So the first one is the curriculum features diverse individuals, their experiences, and contributions to society. So that's up there, number one. And then there may be, on number 7, it's the curriculum references struggles encountered by non-English speaking individuals as well as their cultural contributions. So it just starts digging into the portrayals. So it's one thing to represent a group of people or several groups of people, right? Then you go the step deeper, which is that you're learning more about the culture, and your curriculum can't be separate. So one of the things we saw in the report from our faculty and our students through the focus groups as they were asking the questions before we did this training was so many times faculty and students said, well, my faculty just has so much content to get through. They don't have time to deal with the cultural responsive part. And then the students said, I don't even know where we'd fit it in because we're so busy just getting to the content. They're not separate. This is about shifting the content so it's both meeting the objectives of the course, and it's also embedded with cultural representation in this case. So that's another part, and then we can go to the next one. Then we go into the accuracy of portrayals. And again, this is where we are not sticking to stereotypes and presenting one group of people over and over in the same exact manner. The example I used earlier is that we're not presenting every Latinx or Mexican student as a family who's working in the fields, first generation to finish high school, first generation to go to college. Yeah, that's the story of many, but it's not everybody's story. And we need to broaden that notion that we can, so that you can see a broad spectrum and start relating on a broad spectrum. A couple of these, I'll pick 2. Is number 11, the curriculum does not present non-dominant cultures as alien or exotic. So sometimes you go the other way, and then it's this, wow, so, and it's this exotic thing, and it's not, no, these are people. These are all people that have, just because it's different than yours, doesn't mean it's this, magical thing. It's it's their culture. And then another one, if you say the number 15, the curriculum acknowledges individuals impacted by the legal system can turn their lives around. So that's a story we should be telling through our curriculum. It shouldn't just be these, recidivism stories. And so we can go to the next one. But then it starts digging deeper. And again, this is just a tool, right, to help people start shifting their mindset when they're looking at their curriculum. The tool is, in this part, we're starting to look for developing this social justice lens. What in Dr. Luke Wood today was saying, interject, take some action, and connect what you're learning in the class to what's going on in society or in the community. Help guide the students to see that connection, because you're creating leaders that are able to take action. You're creating social justice champions to start continue this work and spread it out wherever they may go in their profession. And especially at the college level, this is, it shouldn't be a passive experience taking classes. It should broaden your spectrum. Did you want to?
No.
Oh, okay. Let's go to the next slide. Huh? Oh, okay. And then this last piece, this is something that Rick and I really added the infusion, is the action orientation. So what you wouldn't be able to necessarily expect from K-5 or K-12 even, would be the use of our classes as creating an action orientation. So it's one thing to teach them about it, it's one thing to connect to what's going on, but to say, hey, what's going on in the college? How can you relate this to the college or the community? And then take it the next step, what are you going to do about it? Because I remember I had a class with an amazing professor. He was actually one of the people that started up SNCC in the civil rights movement. His name was Dr. James Garrett. And he said, I raised up my hand and I'm like, why don't they do something about it? He goes, who's the they? You're the they. Go do something about it, right? So it gets to the point where there are things that we can be infusing into our curriculum that empower students to make a difference and to go out there and even just be the person that steps in. Even that guidance that we got today about the word you would use to interject and step in and stop and acknowledge, hey, that's not how we do it around here, right? So that's part that should be infused as well. So each part of the instrument kind of dives a little deeper.
Okay, so we're running out of time. We actually had a little activity planned for you that we're not going to be able to get to. But what we'll do is we'll send this PowerPoint out to everybody. If you would like it, just send us an email. We'll send it to you. And the number one here is a history lesson. It's actually from a private company that sells lessons to schools and so forth. And I want you to view that and answer those questions, and then go to the next lesson that's presented, or the conversation, and you will see how U.S. history is taught in two different ways, or two different ways of viewing American history. They aren't the same lesson. They're different events. One takes a broad view of American history, and the other one's an isolated event in U.S. history. But you will see how they contrast with each other. And we were hoping to have enough time to do this, but we won't. So let's just end this with a few questions. And what we encourage you to do, if you aren't part of a professional development group this semester, in the spring we will continue with a new group, and we invite you to join in. As I mentioned earlier, this is a journey. It takes, I think it takes a long time to be what you might term competent in this area. But the fact that you do anything in your classroom makes a huge difference, even if it's just something very small, and then you can keep building on that as you go along.
Yeah, and we wanted to thank you for your time and focus and coming back for the second session, and also special recognition and thank you to the faculty who helped us really transform this instrument. It would not have been successful and would not have been as usable, and it really had a lot of work to be done, and we couldn't have done it without the insight of the faculty listed above. And we also had student input from our focus groups and faculty input from our focus groups. So we really couldn't have piloted this and developed this instrument without that input. So thank you all.
Good afternoon, everybody, and it's been a long day, and it's nice to present something about curriculum. I am Larry Manalo. I am the curriculum chair for Allan Hancock College, which where we are right now. And I got this presentation from Curriculum Institute last summer, and the main theme that they have during that institute was actually expanding the DEI into IDEAA, which is, they say, it's a more transformational acronym for inclusion, diversity, equity, anti-racism, and accessibility. And I pick and choose some of those areas that actually had something to do with how do we really understand culturally responsive teaching and learning? How do we initiate discussions on integrating the IDEAA in the classroom, as well as how do we incorporate IDEAA in curriculum review, development, and implementation? It's a tall order. It's a tall order. And as a result, something like my initial question for that is that do we change the way we write our course outline of record? And something like, well, maybe, maybe not. And after discussing certain parts of the curriculum, certain parts of the course outline, you let me know if is it really necessary to make those changes. Why focus this? Why focus IDEAA in the course outline? Well, the course outline is a legally binding document. It sets the tone and expectations for all of the courses taught in the college. Course outline guides instructor, but they are not going to be telling how instructors are going to do it. It guides instructors. Third, students see parts of the course outline in the schedule and the catalog. So it gives them a preview of what to expect in the course. And faculty and transfer institution, and Dave is here to testify to that, look at course outline to see that does it really transfer or does it really meet the transfer institution's requirements for certain courses. Ow. In fall 2021, the ASCC Resolution 9.01, they added cultural responsive curriculum, equity-mindedness, and anti-racism in the course outline of record requirements for Title V. So it is actually built into the law. Isn't that interesting? Would that do it? And here you go. You could see that, be it resolved, the Academic Senate of California Community Colleges work with California Community College Chancellor's Office to revise the California Code of Regulation Title V, including Section 55002, titled Standards and Criteria for Courses, include a component of culturally responsive curriculum, equity-mindedness, and anti-racism integrated in the course outline of record that allows for local control on how that requirement is fulfilled, and be it resolved that the Academic Senate of California Community Colleges work with the Chancellor's Office to include future publications, webinars, and other resource guidelines and multiple examples of how to infuse cultural responsiveness, equity-minded, and anti-racism in the course outline of record. And after reading that, I felt like we are adding more information about culturally responsive curriculum. However, it kind of gives me a little bit of a chills when I start thinking about, do we really just write it down as a token evidence of we're doing what they're asking us to do? And the bigger question for me is it really a true intention among faculty to address those issues that has something to do with inclusion, diversity, equity, anti-racism, and accessibility? So I start looking at what they told us to do, and start thinking of going back to the classroom. How do we really do this? And for me, it gives me chills when I start thinking that, wait a minute, am I guilty of doing all of the things that I should not be doing, or that's not really serving my students well? So based on that, they clarified during the conference that considering IDEA to the standards of approval for all courses and not as a separate new element of the course outline, but a standard that should be integrated throughout the different elements of the course outline as appropriate to the course content and discipline. And of course, the question is, how would math, how would industrial technology have those components in their courses? So that became a big question. How do the STEM courses have these kinds of components? And that was an interesting thing. So they provided ideas for disciplined faculty who develop curriculum, and APNP committee reviews, recommends, and approves curriculum, and all curriculum champions to serve the students. And they actually provided more information in terms of how we could start looking at better language in our course outline of record. It's a fine print. I'm not asking you to read it. Here you go. Course title and description. It usually what students see first about the class. What message do they send? Is it welcoming, inviting, inclusive? Is it descriptive? Is it accurate? Is it understandable, relevant? And is it including discipline-specific technology? So here's an example. I use my class. I'm a nursing instructor, so of course I'll use some nursing courses. I have an transitions to professional nursing, and the course introduces the professional nurse caring. It includes foundation in communication, teaching and learning, nursing process, clinical judgment, lifespan, and how these concepts, skills, and issues affect and are affected by diverse populations. So diverse population, is that enough? When you start thinking, I mean, does it mean I'm culturally responsive by doing that? And needing health services, it covers principles of self-care that focuses on multicultural differences, attitudes, and beliefs. It surveys legal, ethical, historical, social, cultural aspects of nursing, emphasizes so on and so forth. But how do I do that in my classroom? I had a lecture on the history of nursing, and they were describing the Crimean War and Florence Nightingale. And I said, okay, I have a class in Santa Maria in year 2022 saying, what is this story about and how does it really impact you? And interesting enough, I look at my textbook and then say, you know what, there's nothing in here that tells something about the story of the people I'm talking to. And when I start talking about that, I said, okay, let's see, let's get one person straight in this story. Number one is that Florence Nightingale is not the first nurse ever. There have been nurses in all civilizations that took care of other people at different levels of health. And we started that discussion, and actually they participated and say they never thought that history could be that exciting. And we went into that conversation and said, okay, what kind of led you into really considering nursing as your career path? And that engaged a lot more conversation. So now I understood why. Now I understood why they said that it can be part of your course description, but what you do afterwards may be the one that would matter more in terms of how do you translate that? Is it just a token conversation that you say, oh, the story of the Latinos in nursing, this is it? I said, no, it's not just a snippet in it. It's more of where were you or where were the people that you identify with? What were they doing at the time that we're talking about? So I said, it actually give me a little bit of a pause, and I said, oh, that kind of feels like they were more engaged than what I usually put them to sleep anyway. But this time they're a little bit more awake when they start thinking that, okay, I may be part of this story. And interesting enough, additional stories have happened in terms of how they struggled to get into the program. And it went to that kind of stories as well. Thank you. Yes. Yes. When you start thinking, I think that's the more meaningful interpretation of that one when you start thinking about it. Okay? But the plot thickens. Units and hours. Higher units and hours can slow student progress and have consequences for financial aid, industry and transfer, enrollment, non-credit options. You have heard that I've been pushing people to really consider non-credit options for some of their courses, because something like non-credit means that you reach a different audience. It is of no cost to the students, and they may be able to repeat the courses and actually learn and develop the requisite skills to move to the credit section or to actually progress into careers. And then transfer degrees and required maximum of 60, stack certificates and employability. Nursing has been a ladder program for us. They have to be a CNA, and then an LVN, and then an RN. We had a lot of conversations through the years that we are going to abolish that practice, because it seems like all of our students are going from one program to another, and they all have decided to go to the RN program eventually. But with stack certificate, I'm finding that graduation means a lot to our students. It's an accomplishment. It is something to fuel going to the next phase. So why am I taking that away? Not to mention we get rewarded for it, for the student funding formula because of that, but I'm not supposed to say that. But I learned through the years that when you start looking at hours and units for non-credit hours, always think that how many hours do you really need to be able to teach what you're going to need to teach? Does it require 5 hours, 10 hours? No matter that, but it should be based on how much time you need to be able to present the material. So units and hours, you could see that having a lot of units may actually be a hardship for some of your students, right? It means more money. It means that they have to be in school more. And on top of that, they have to have more assignments because it's a high unit course. And as a result, is it now going to separate the students who have something or the students who have not had something? Next one. Requisites and conditions of enrollment. This has been a hot topic. We've talked about English and math requirements. And we have found that through our throughput studies, even though we have a lot of issues with how we are going to implement AB 705, we found that students actually have a greater chance of going to transfer level English and math if we remove a lot of the other barriers that led them to that level. And I still hear that, okay, they should have a below transfer level math or below transfer level English. And for this purpose, they actually were able to see that there are more students accomplishing these goals of being at the transfer level English with no adverse effects on their ability to go on to the completing the course and the programs and even transfer. So I would be so happy to see that our transfer students may have increased in number because we facilitated something. They are continuing AB 705 to AB 1705, and it was signed by the governor. And this time, they clarified the transfer level English and math and now added more more provisions for a below transfer level English and math. And this is more of a robust discussion about some of our CTE programs that they don't necessarily need to transfer to another institution, but just need the math that is required for the industry. So I think it's creating another pathway not to intimidate students on getting a transfer level English and math. Content, culturally responsive and anti-racist. I was thinking, somebody mentioned to me that, Larry, you don't understand American history. And I said, which part? I said, am I even part of that story? I love that. I'm proud that I grew up in the Philippines. And being in the Philippines, I have a Philippine history course. In that Filipino history course, it told me how Filipinos fought for independence. It gives me chills that if I grew up in America as a Filipino immigrant, as a young person, I would never have heard that. It gives me chills that we have blocked off a big segment of our society for the story of what happened to your own ethnic group, to your own race, that you're not part of the story. They're only picking and choosing which stories that they would just highlight it, but it's so centered on only one point of view. I love looking at a lot of old books, and every time I see a lot of old books, and they were written in New England, and I said, they could read this story and identify with it, but if you start bringing it to California during that time, I don't think they would identify who those people are. So you could see, if people tell me that I don't know American history, it's because most probably I wasn't part of that story for me to even relate to. So when they talk about decolonizing, it dawned on me that it is more of a story of a struggle of one group of people against another group of people. And there's always winners and losers without recognizing the achievements of one group or the other. And the conversation stops there. And I said, it shouldn't. We should continue that conversation. So when we talk about decolonizing, start thinking about what are the achievements of the people around you. Recognize them. Recognize them. What are the contributions to math, science, architecture? We have a very rich history in California, very rich history in South America about what happens. I like it when they label the book World History, and it's about Europe, right? It doesn't have anything to do with what's happening in China, what's happening in the Philippines, what's happening in South America, what's happening in Africa. Nobody mentioned anything like that. And I said, wait, how could you tell me it's world history? So you could see that if I'm not part of that world history, then why are we calling it world? So you could see that content is about examine what is in the course and what is left out. And I gave you examples on what is left out. So they have said that there are multiple contributions. And again, please don't just add them just as a token, add that, oh, by the way, this is what you did. I said, no. The story should actually be seamless in terms of, okay, this is what's happening at this time. And as a result, this is what one group was doing, this is what another group was doing. And recognize the achievements of those groups. Course objectives and student learning outcomes. You have culture responsive and anti-racism, that contributions of other various cultures to any given topic. I like that they were mentioning about the impact of food and plants on various groups. I think that's very, very, very realistic when you start thinking about, wait a minute, how did corn shape civilization? And as a result, how did corn affect groups of people, the American Indians, the Mexican Americans? How did money and economy affect all the different groups? So why are we limiting it to one group? I now don't understand why we're doing that. And this has been a call to conscience for me that we have been very tailored, very, very focused on what our textbooks are showing instead of saying, wait a minute, is there another viewpoint to this topic? Is there another viewpoint to what we're doing? And when I start looking at student learning outcomes, I start looking at, by the end of the session, what do I really want from my students? I'm teaching pharmacology right now, and one thing that I have found is that I used to grade students with either you get the point or you don't. So you either get 1 point for answering a question correctly or 0 if you did not answer it. A multiple choice question, A, B, C, D. If you chose B, it means that you're correct. If you did not choose B, it means you're wrong. And what I found, I said, wait a minute, I think that's too punitive, but does it really tell me that they're thinking? So what I decided was, for that multiple choice question, I said, let's make it a question. For each selection, you have a decision to make. Is this true or false? True or false? And thankfully, Canvas actually gives partial credit. So as a result, instead of getting the absolute 0 or an absolute 1, they now ended up with more grades between 0 and 1. So when you start thinking about, did they learn something? Yes. They made a decision for each and every option. And as a result, they are rewarded for it. And all I could say is, what are you rewarding for? Another one for student learning outcomes was I learned from Stephanie Crosby. She said, Larry, not being able to speak English fluently is not a disability. You're right. But we have used learning assistants to give additional time accommodations. So I said, I could have done that. So now what I do is every exam I have, no time limit. At the end of the class, you go home or you're done when you're done and stay there as long as you want. And what I found is that people with challenges in the language, they raise their hand and say, Larry, what does it mean? Here, let me sit with you. And we take time to talk about it. And as a result, I said, oh, okay, I get it. Now they're making a decision based on understanding rather than a decision just because they didn't understand it. So would they get the point or not? They will, because they understood what they're being asked. So when I start looking at course objective and student outcomes, do we really measure them, and do we really put ourselves to task of actually doing something about it? I used to have a very high failure rate in that class, and now this was the first time that everybody's doing okay. So I said, I hope that they learned something, but I think I'm giving them more opportunities to learn something. I have also found that when we're looking at student learning outcomes, I also found that if you just ask for assistance, the whole college is willing to help you. I was able to ask for time to have tutors available. I've always asked for times that they could actually meet with me. So I designed my office hours as a mini session of a rehash of the lecture for each week. And all I could say is, you could see all the eyes that they have that say, oh my God, the light lit up. And that is what student learning outcomes is about. Are they getting what you are teaching? Are you meeting the purpose of why you're there in the first place? And as a result, when you start writing it, it's not putting the word culturally responsive to it. It's putting something that truly measures what you're looking for and what you're aiming for. Any questions with that? So assignments and evaluations. Again, we said that assignments align with content. Student experiences and content. Have them do an essay. It doesn't have to be a long essay. The biggest word I learned from that one is authentic assignments and learning. Authentic assignments and learning, sorry, Tina, but it's not grading a paper for English and grammar. You're grading a paper for thought and content that you're teaching. Why are you grading spelling and everything and deducting points for that? So is that lowering your standard? What do you guys think about that? Is that lowering your standard? If you don't grade for spelling and grammar, but rather for thought and content based on your subject matter. We have grappled with that in nursing for years. We always say English and math, you guys need help us with those calculations and how to write papers because our students are not very strong writers. Well, that's the nature of what we have. And as a result, something like, so why are we punishing them for having another language to speak and another language to write? So all I could say is authentic assignments have something to do with measuring or determining whether what you are teaching is what they are learning. And that has been very transformational for us because, again, we are nurses. We always follow a lot of conventions. We always follow a lot of rules. We wordsmith everything. Course materials, text. We were very, very adamant that every student has a textbook of the recent edition of the recent publication of anything. And what we have found out that certain students are not really able to purchase the book. And as a result, I said, okay, first of all, is it even legal to require that? I think everything that is required in a class is always optional because people have different reasons for not purchasing it. So I have been pushing students to, number one, use whatever they could beg, steal, or borrow from prior students. Second, if they would not be able to get the book for one reason or the other, I try to do on a book loan program with them from my own shelf. And I even made arrangements for the library to have reserved copies of certain textbooks. And as a result, the library has been able to help us with copying certain chapters, and you could loan it out. And so far, we have had students that avail of that, but they were eventually able to borrow it. But every time you start seeing your course materials, start thinking, could my students really afford this? Are there online available resources that you can have? Are there cheaper versions of it? I mean, if they were able to get a textbook that's about 2 or 3 editions behind, don't tell CSU. But rather, have them be responsible for compare it with a more current edition. But I will base, you could base your lectures on the current edition or update them on those differences. You could even put on your syllabus about what are the equivalent chapters for different editions. So there are ways to help your students. You do not have to make these course materials so prohibitive. So again, I'm pleading that every time you're looking at the course outline, think of how it impacts your students, not just how you're fitting the mold of what is required, but rather what is in your heart of hearts would best serve the students that you have, or even your future students. Go for it. Mm-hmm. Wow. No, that's illegal. Oh, they are doing it? Mhm. Very interesting, right? When you start thinking about what we really could do. It's just amazing. You can. Oh, to capture it. Bibliu is a good resource for free textbooks. And we should caution about copying other people's material and emailing it to other people because that's an infringement of intellectual property. Huh? Mhm. And library is complying with it. Course elements and IDEAA, and this is opportunities for GE, transfer, and articulation. Distance education. Every time you schedule something, if you think that your students would be more amenable to a distance education offering, please, please, please consider having a distance education offering for your students and have that flexibility. So we talked about so many things about how the course outline of record have actually been subtle or not really very forward in saying you should do this, but rather if you read between the lines, it's actually getting to be more considerate or more student friendly when you start thinking of how do I better write my objectives? How do I better write my content? How do I better write my assignments, my requirements? And myth is that idea is not applicable to all courses or disciplines. And I find this kind of fun. In small groups, they say identify to incorporate idea in your course and in your respective discipline. So I'll put everybody in the spot. And anybody has found a way to incorporate culturally responsive curriculum in your classes? And tell me what's your class and what have you done? Go for it.
I teach math, specifically stats and stuff, and we started using a calculator app called ClassCalc that is free to students to have and use on their phones. So not only are they using the phones, which they're bringing to class anyways, and they're pulling out in class anyways, but they get to have their phones literally out and on the table when they're doing their exams because they're using the app, which lets us put it into test mode. So they're all much more comfortable and they don't have to go and borrow technology that they're going to turn back in and never use again. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it's a tool that they continue to use and would feel comfortable with in the future.
Anybody else? Any good stories? Go for it.
I'm not sure if it's a good story, but so when in language, when we talk about the idiomatic expressions and actually in Spanish, we also discuss the ones that we've heard in English. So we do comparison to other languages if there is enough time to talk about that, and also in terms of the cultural perspective. It's always, it's not better, it's not worse, it's just different. And then I invite students to also share from their own cultural experience, depending the content of the topic we're talking about, to elaborate. And so I believe that it really creates this sense of inclusiveness, even though we're still targeting the content that we're supposed to be covering, but then everyone feels engaged. And so that's just two of the examples that I can think about. Yeah.
And you could see that they have strategies for STEM students that they featured in that conference as well. They say that 7 principles, the ICU Care Equity Framework. And I thought it was kind of interesting when you start thinking about including others as experts, which means that you could ask your students to say, okay, what's your story behind this? And then you could even say, be critically conscious to take time to understand how negative stereotypes. When Dr. Luke Wood was mentioning something about the cameras in the classroom and jokingly somebody made a comment about it, I was actually more concerned about why are there cameras in the classroom? So I was like, okay, but I don't know if I'm going to detract the whole conversation about the cameras in the classroom. But nonetheless, something like we have to be a little bit more curious about it. They say take time to understand how negative stereotypes impact your students. And I love how he presented that we may be doing certain things that are actually negatively impacting our students. I remember when I dropped an English course when I was in college in the Philippines, my instructor actually told me that you will never amount to anything. And I heard the same story in that conference that somebody did that, and he was so defeated when he felt that because something like I didn't know that. I just realized that as instructors, we really are very powerful in our words, that it can have reverberating effects on people. Understand your students well. I used to call all of my instructors Mr. last name. And now I said, well, no, if you call me Mr. Manalo, that's my father. So I don't want to be called like my dad. So I want to be called Larry. And what I found was they are more likely to approach me with it. And I said, okay, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. As long as you could approach me. I said, I have been one of those nursing instructors that I just stand there and just stare at somebody and watch them carefully while they're doing something. And they say that is the most scariest thing somebody would ever do to you. And I also was one of those people that I stand there, and if they're struggling a little bit, I give them time, but I still just stand there and see how they're going to figure it out. And what I found was when you have a student that's struggling, they're actually the most vulnerable. And all I could say is, why are we doing that? Why did I do that? And I could not, you know what I mean? You could count the number of times that you may be well intentioned in trying to help a person, but maybe your efforts are really actually counterproductive because of the methods you choose. And that's the thing that I always get from these classes about maybe there are things that I'm doing that is counterproductive. And as a result, how do I fix that? Third one is use culturally relevant curricula. Use instructional materials in ways that help students see themselves as doers. And I found that they have stereotypes about certain people who could do math better than others. Certain ethnicities are intimidating to be classmates because they do well, they make you feel like you're a failure. And all I could say is, wait a minute, why are we doing that? And based on the speaker, he mentioned that they conducted a lot of these small groups that actually are peer help groups, and they were able to actually help each other. And I think we do that during the test month, right? Around finals, we have student groups that are helping each other, and these communities have been proven to be very, very helpful. Assess, activate, and build upon prior knowledge. Release control and expect more. I have heard so many complaints about, well, Larry, if you do that, you lower the standard. I said, no. I just expect more because I expect them to understand the material and apply the material. You don't just say that, okay, it's okay for you to perform poorly. Well, if they're performing poorly, it means that they may not understand what they're doing. So help them. It's not about just telling them, assessing them, but rather it's also about providing the necessary assistance to help them through. There's another one. Hesabu circle was the Kiswahili word for math. And they also have math groups for that one. And I thought that was pretty innovative. And I think they have those meetings that they have. Let's see if it works. See, they actually get together and actually help each other. and talk about all of the issues that they deal with, and actually they create interventions. Isn't that cool? So here's the story. Kagba Soare, a professor of math at Cal State Long Beach, recently created a unique program to combat racial inequities in his field. Its name for math consists of virtual monthly meetings for Black math educators and professionals to connect with young African Americans of all ages. And during the meetings, participants discuss a variety of topics that highlight how math is used beyond the classroom. Shouldn't we be doing that for a lot of other things? A lot of our CTE programs as well. I actually have seen how a lot of people in the food science and nutrition group, they actually do a lot of activities with their food to table activities. So they really engage their students and they really cheer them on in terms of what they have achieved as they go through the program. So I think that's a very close equivalent we have in this college. I like that thing about Hidden Figures. Anybody have watched the movie for Hidden Figures? What do you guys think? What did you guys get out of it? And of course I put you in the spot.
Injustice and breaking down stereotypes and empowerment.
And as a result, how do we manage those injustices and how do we break the stereotypes of people? And if you think about it, if we break them, people could rise. These people, right? They have to break through. And why do they have to break through? For them to rise. Why do they have to have that struggle? Right? San Diego, this is fun. This is Dr. Rob Rubalcava, tutoring sessions, helping each other. They call it the Math Jam. If I could get it.
Math Jam is a community event where we all come together and help each other. We have calculus 3 students, calculus 2 students, calculus students helping out each other, helping out trigonometry students, helping stat students, helping algebra students. The algebra students are helping the elementary algebra students out, and everybody's just helping each other out.
We have that a few times during the school year. We have them close to midterms or close to finals, and it's really a way to for math students to all come together and have a big study session.
Math Jam is a place for students to go and study and work on their math. I used to struggle on getting started. Coming in here was helpful for me because I'm able to get help from tutors and able to solve a problem step by step. It's helpful, yeah. It's actually really helpful.
It starts off with like Dr. Rob playing music, and the music draws a crowd. People walk by and they're just like, what's this music? What's the hoopla? Why are all these people around here? Why is this professor DJing? Like, what's going on?
Before the Math Jam, we have pizza, music, really to get us all in the mood for math, get us inspired and ready to go.
We're out there dancing with each other, having a good time. So it's just kind of a real build-up for the event.
Go to the tutoring center. Let's get it started, y'all. Come on.
I think the biggest thing with the Math Jams is just finding community and struggling, and it takes a village to get through all of this math together.
This Math Jam is here to help students graduate. There's some students that math is the one thing holding them back or holding them from coming to school. There's a lot of students that want to come back to school, but that math is they're a little afraid of it. So this whole event is to remove the fear from that.
I've never had a professor like Dr. Rob. He makes himself available outside of the classroom 15 to 20 hours a week. He's really there to help you. He really wants to help see you win.
His motto, and I feel like his philosophy, is just like building an environment where you don't struggle alone. And it's just the community and just knowing that you're not alone.
My experience with math has just made my life into something that is just so amazing.
Kind of energetic, huh? And again, I don't know if they would like the same music as I would. But at the same time, it's just amazing.
And growing generational wealth is a key factor for success in the Black community. To gain insight, I visited Dr. Ricky Shabazz, president of San Diego City College. He is committed to.
So anyway, when we start looking at, these are the faces of all of our nursing students from last year. And all I could say is, I don't know whether we are doing enough. I don't think it's never enough of what we have done to serve our students. And idea is beyond the curriculum. It's not just saying that, okay, your course outline has all of these elements, but how do you translate that into the classroom activities or the teaching environments that you have? And all I could say is, how do we instill that to each and every one of us in the college? And I think I would dare to suggest, have an ongoing conversation about it. Use it in your department meetings. Use it in a hallway conversation on what you have achieved. I have been having a lot of those conversations with our own faculty in my nursing program and even in our department meetings about how we could write tests better, how we could ask for resources for whatever we need, what is the best way to that, making ourselves available. And as a result, something like, it's just a matter of how do we really, really promote student success. If we really want them to succeed, I think it begins with a really true, honest evaluation of what are we really doing that is counterproductive, and start correcting or start adjusting those things. I like that it was a call for conscience. It's a call for dedication to what we're doing. And it's also a call for loving what you do and enjoying each and every moment that you're here. Any questions? Yes.
I wanted to tell one story since Larry teaches nursing. When Leanne and I started to develop our culturally responsive higher education assessment tool, we became connected with Chamberlain University that has a face-to-face nursing program and an online nursing program, a BSN program. And so their online students were really struggling. They had admission standards that were real high. Their online students were struggling. Their face-to-face students were outperforming them by far. And they began working with us in the Achieving the Dream Foundation on an instrument very similar to ours. They then trained their faculty in culturally responsive education. They trained their online faculty, not their face-to-face faculty. They developed the assessment tool, started using it, modified their curriculum. Now their online students outperform their face-to-face students, and they lowered their admission standards. So this can make a big impact, and there's evidence from that university that it works. And it's a STEM area. Chamberlain University.
It's more a comment. Thank you, Larry, for such a great presentation. And I would like for, hopefully through the PD, if you can offer professional development, offer this session later, maybe you can work with the DEI task force, because I know ideas coming down the pipeline from ASCCC. So this is there's a lot of conversation at the state level about this particular topic. So who knows, maybe we can further this conversation at a different level. And if you would like to continue sharing your wisdom across campus, will be great. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Larry. So we have about 15 minutes-ish, or I guess a little bit less than that. At 3 o'clock, we'll start the student panel. Thank you. Check, 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 check. You're good? Woo! Woo! Okay, we are back in action. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for spending your day with us. I hope you've enjoyed all of the sessions. We're here at the last session of the day and arguably the most important because we have some students with us today. We've spoke a lot today. You've heard a lot of presentations about culturally responsive curriculum, and this morning's presentation with Dr. Wood about microaggressions and creating a more inclusive environment for our students. So we felt that as the DEI task force, when I say we, I mean the DEI task force, felt, well, we would not be able to have an inclusion seminar, inclusion summit without talking to our students and finding out directly from them, how are they feeling about these topics. And before, I won't take any more time, as we really want to hear from them. And we're just going to start it off with, do you feel as a student here on Hancock, on the campus, do you individually feel a sense of belonging here? If you do or do not, we'd be happy if you would be willing to share why. So if you feel like you do belong here on campus, maybe why, or if you've had a sense or a moment where you felt you didn't belong, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us, that would be great as well. So I will give the mic to whomever would like to start.
Hello, my name is Edward Lamberson, and I do feel like I have a sense of belonging on campus because there's been times where I've showed up to the campus and it's been like an hour before my class starts, and I'm just sitting on my iPad doing work or playing games or something, and students will come up and talk to me and introduce themselves, and just try to get to know me, and it makes me feel really good just because I don't feel different just because I'm in a wheelchair. I just feel treated the same as anyone else would, so I feel like I do belong on campus just from those experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, Allan Hancock College has kind of turned into a home for me. It embraced me from, I'm going to say it took me about 2 weeks before I actually quit being frightened to death. I was a student who started late, never went to high school. I mean, I went to high school, but never to college until almost 60. And I thought, gosh, this is scary. But then I had one of my instructors say, you know what, Aura? They're just as scared as you are. You just have a little different knowledge. And I have been just so embraced by many of the different services. They've all been fantastic. And I have hats off and a lot of love to my campus family.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Del Rio, and I'm formerly incarcerated. I'm going on my second year here at Hancock, and it was kind of scary for me stepping onto a college campus. Like I said, I'm formerly incarcerated. I struggle with addiction, and I've lived a certain lifestyle for so long. So stepping onto a college campus was very scary for me. A lot of people kind of trip out when I say that because I was in prison for 9 years, and I've been on so many different prison yards. So hearing, stepping onto a college campus is scary. It might be weird to some people, but to me, that's just the truth. And, to answer the question, to be completely honest with you, sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. And when I first started here at Hancock, my first impression of Hancock was this one day, I came with my wife because she's coming for her GED, and we were looking for the GED building. And I remember we had stopped by an office because my student mentor in a program called Rising Scholars for formerly and currently incarcerated students, he had told me that if I need help with anything and he's not here to help me, just to look for anyone with the blue tag, tell them that you're a first-time student and you need help. And so that's exactly what I did. And I went into a random office and I seen a lady behind a desk. And I told her I'm a first-time student and I'm lost. And so she stopped what she was doing and she went from behind the desk and walked me halfway because she didn't want me or my wife to get lost. And so that was my first impression on Hancock. And right away, that thought came in, like, I want to work here. And so, I got involved in Rising Scholars and the Biggie Club, Beyond Incarceration, Greater Education. And I started telling my story. And so I applied for a position in the counseling office. And as you can see, I have a tattoo on my forehead, and it stands for a neighborhood that I'm not, it stands for something that I don't stand for anymore. And I'm actually in the process of getting it removed. But for a while, I'm sitting at the front desk, so I don't want to intimidate anyone, so I started wearing a hat. But this is when COVID was like really, I know COVID's still going on, but this is when it really kicked up, so I was wearing a mask and a hat, and I kind of felt like I was hiding myself. And I didn't like that feeling, so I stopped wearing the hat. And maybe like a week after, I was in the process of getting off parole, so probably like a week after, I reached out to a counselor in a building, and they said, I asked them if they could write me a reference letter in order to get off parole because I was getting as much letters as possible. And he asked to talk to me, so I went inside his office, and he said that, yeah, he doesn't have a problem writing me a letter, but if I could do him a favor and put my hat back on so I could cover my tattoo. And man, that just it caught me off guard, and I didn't even know how to respond. And to be completely honest, all those feelings of, running into that employee here at Hancock and feeling like, man, Hancock is for every student. It doesn't matter who you are, what background you're coming from, they just want to help you succeed. And I want to do the same thing. All those feelings that I had, they just started like going away. And I started thinking, my mind started playing with me like, man, maybe Hancock is not for me. And all those feelings started getting back before I even enrolled at Hancock, that feeling of not belonging, the feeling of being out of place. And my first instinct was just to run, was to stop working in the counseling office, quit my classes. And but I'm also part of a local recovery group called Santa Maria Survivors. It's a Narcotics Anonymous group, and one of the things that they teach us in this recovery group is to reach out for help. And so that's what I did. I reached out to both of my mentors, Ralphie Valdivinos and Cheech Rayagoza, and I didn't leave. And one of the things that the Biggie Club has taught me was that, your voice is powerful and it needs to be heard. And so that's what I did. I spoke up. I reached out, and Cheech connected me with Lynn Valencia, and Lynn connected me with Yvonne Teniente, and I brought this issue up to her and what this counselor had told me, and she pretty much told me, just do whatever you feel comfortable. If you feel comfortable wearing a hat, then wear a hat. If you don't, then don't wear a hat. At the end of the day, you're a Hancock student, and I just want you to feel comfortable. So I threw that hat away. But I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I do get that feeling of like I don't belong, but more than half the time I don't have that feeling, and I don't let. Even though I had two separate situations, one was negative and one was positive, I don't let that negative one outweigh the positive, because there's more good here at Hancock than there is bad, and I still I want to be that. I want to be that person to show people that are coming from my background that we can further our education and that this college campus is for us. It doesn't matter what we've done in our past. We might have done stupid things, but made stupid decisions, bad decisions, but we're not bad people. And I'm a strong believer of second chances, and I don't like judging people off their past. I don't judge people off their past. I judge them by the person that they are today and how they carry themselves. But I'm sorry, I know I take a little more time than I was supposed to, but thank you for letting me share.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Reyes. I'm here on behalf of our Pride Alliance Club on campus, which is our LGBTQ plus club that just restarted this summer, actually. So what we did for the questions, we were able to see them in advance, and we actually asked some of our club members about their responses to them as well, because we have a very diverse club, and a lot of individuals have different experiences. But so I'm just going to be mentioning some of the things that were kind of through lines through their answers. So as far as belonging on campus, a lot of club members mentioned that our meetings and being around other club members in that environment is one of the only places in their lives, not just on campus, but in their lives, that they are totally able to be themselves and know that the people around them accept them and validate them. So maybe it's their home situation where they can't be called their correct name, or they can't be called their correct pronouns. They don't know about relationships they have, or just their identity, very core parts of their identity that no one else knows about or can share. They know that they're accepted in that space. So that contributes a huge part of belonging to our club members. And other club as well, some people mentioned like chess club, so those environments really expand their connection to Hancock as a whole. And that affects their belonging as a student, because if you want to be here, you're more likely to put in that effort and you feel at home. I would like to add that a big part of it was also the environment that professors created for them in their classrooms. So that included using gender neutral pronouns in their curriculum while they were talking about scenarios, or asking their students, through email for only their eyes to see what pronouns they want to be called by. Or there was even one situation where a student talked about that. During the class in the room, there was a student who mentioned, "Oh, I saw this guy today. He was wearing a skirt," and just disgustingly, things that don't need to be said in a classroom setting that made people uncomfortable. And that professor spoke up and said, "You can't say that here. This is my classroom. I get to say what is okay to be said here and what is not." And things that make other students feel that way are not accepted. So you don't know you are welcome. You don't know you're accepted. You don't know that you will be defended and validated until someone does it, until someone says it. So as a professor, you could be the most accepting person ever, and you could be willing to be a defender of any student. But unless you say that and unless you prove it, a student doesn't know that. So they don't know that the classroom is a place that they are safe and they are able to be themselves at all times.
Hi everyone, my name is Samantha or Sam Martinez. I am very involved here on campus. I've only been here for 3 semesters. I'm on my 3rd semester, but I have joined the fashion club. I'm part of ASBG, Associated Student Body Government, as along with some of my fellow students up here, which I admire greatly. And Stephanie has just done an amazing job of opening up opportunities to us that I came from a high school where it was obvious that I was the minority. Not only in terms of ethnic or racial in a sense, but in terms of the way that I dressed, the way that I presented myself, the way that I carried myself. I was often perceived as I was being too loud, too confident. I wasn't conservative enough, which as soon as I came here to Hancock, I realized that all these things that I was being told were being too much. Now these things are being capitalized as my strengths. And my professors have been a huge part in that. They tell me to capitalize on my strengths and to be a leader and to continue to make other students feel as though that they are not alone and they can also speak up, and the things that maybe they don't feel comfortable about themselves, these are things that we should capitalize on and not be afraid to show to the world. And these are just unique things that make us individuals. And Hancock has been a great part of showing me who I am as an individual and in different ways that I can help other students come out of their shell and get to know their strengths. And another aspect of belonging here on campus is definitely the area in which you are studying. I myself I've fallen in love with my major, and in so many ways I've been able to make connections to professors in terms of, you know, the workforce. I've been exposed to opportunities pertaining to my major and pertaining to my area of study that already I know are going to get me so far along the way into my career, which I really appreciate, and it wouldn't be imaginable without Hancock. So I've been having a great experience, and I'm very happy to be a part of this and hearing from everyone else. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Ediana Isip. I'm a first generation Asian. Both of my parents are actually Filipino, so I'm full Filipino and I'm proud of it. I'm fortunate to be brought up in this community that not only has different cultures but has expressed um, different aspects of pride. Um, my family members are all very proud to be Filipino and very proud to be brought up in this community. Um, Not only did they come over here to give our cousins and our family better lives, but they came over there. They came over here knowing that it was a safe place to be here. So for me, fortunately, I have felt a belonging ever since I stepped on campus. And that was due to other students, that was due to faculty, that was due to administration and everyone who I talked with. Unfortunately, that can't be the case for everyone around the campus or around the city or around the states. But that's why I feel that this is so important that all of you are here and all of the faculty and everyone is just being brought aware that there are different kinds of cultures, there are different kinds of diversities, there's different kind of races, ethnicities. Me as a sociology major, I am fortunate enough to learn about these things. And I love it. Like I love it so much. But I'm fortunate enough to learn about all of these different things. But I think it's very important that teachers and students or other students are brought to the attention that there are many things that make others uncomfortable. Yeah. There are many things that make other people uncomfortable, so I just think that we should all be aware and are educated about things so that we know what we can do to help other people. And that's what I love about Hancock is that we all know that we should be open-minded and we should care for other students and other faculty members. Thank you.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Froy Escalante. I'm a first generation coming from a Hispanic household. You know, I don't look Hispanic, but I am. I felt like I have a really good belonging to the college. When I first came, I was really scared, especially going into STEM, because I would always hear how hard it is. But like, actually coming here, there's a lot of help from like the teachers, from a lot of the students, like the math center, now the STEM center, and I feel like everyone's there struggling with me. I'm not alone. And like whenever I had a problem, like there was always help, not just with my classes, but with like financial aid. If I needed like money for anything, like the school, like there was always an opportunity somewhere, and someone would always help me find it. So I felt like I always belonged. And recently I started a club with my church, and I felt like it was like the easiest thing to do, like start a club. Like I thought I was gonna get needed to get like 20 signatures from over here, then go over here and get more. But they just gave me the paperwork and like, oh yeah, just sign this, get this many signatures. Like by 2 days, I was like already like ready to start the club. So I've had a lot of help here, and I hope other students have the same experience as I had.
So some of you already touched on the next question in terms of curriculum, but so do any of you have experience in terms of diversity and culture where you feel that you were represented or connected to the course content? And if so, did that experience strengthen, impacted, reinforce your identity? So there's two questions to that. So some of you already touch about the course content.
So I kind of had to go over the question again, but right now I am taking two classes: English 101 with 112 and PD 101. And these classes are cohort. They're part of the Big E learning community, and the material that we go over, that we talk about, the first person that we were learning about was Malcolm X, and about the struggles and obstacles that he faced, but then overcome out as he was incarcerated. And I know you kind of touched on a little bit now about learning about different people from so many years ago. And to be honest with you, it's kind of hard to connect or relate to these people. And learning about this material, about people being formerly incarcerated or people dealing with the same struggles that I dealt with, it's inspiring, and it's motivating. And so being able to connect and relate to this material, it's been huge for me because I'm actually in it. And the other night, I was supposed to read a couple of chapters, and I'm not a procrastinator, but I did it like the night before. So I'm reading this material on Angela Davis. I think the book, a Prison Reform or Prison Abolition. And I just started getting into it. And my wife was like, hey, babe, go to the room. Like, I'm trying to dodge my kids, and I'm walking and reading at the same time. But it interests me. And I honestly couldn't stop reading. And so, material like that, it's hard, like, not to get into it. And another thing about this learning community, I've never been in classes like this before. Like I said, this is my second year here at Hancock. And this English 101 class and PD 101 is, man, I can't say enough about this class. The way all the students participate and support each other. And most of all, the teachers, Dr. Janae Demick and Lynn Valencia, they're awesome. And they make you want to participate. And but most of all, they want to hear your opinion and your perspective. And they make you feel like your words are important. But I hope I answered it correctly.
That was excellent. I don't know, there's probably so much that I learned just from being around my classmates. I think that's the best cultural and diversity activity I can do, is just being with my peers and my classmates and everyone on campus, because I learn something every day. Whether it's what I can do to help out Edward to make his day better, or how I can converse with my classmate here and the rest of my classmates in the leadership class, and how I get along with my AGS members, and how we do things together make us a diverse culture in itself. And I think it's called Hancock College culture. That's my culture.
So for this question, I have a couple responses from our club members. One of them was actually about an acknowledgement of family structures beyond the nuclear family in a textbook, which is just, it's from a textbook, you know. I'm not even sure if it was spoken about in lecture, but just the acknowledgement that, you know, a non-cis man, woman headed household exists, and that households can have love and, you know, all the things that make a family. Also talking about the workforce and choosing a job or a company that fits your values, connected to really well to one of our students, because, you know, there's the idea of compromising versus wanting to have a lifestyle that you can feel proud of, and just choosing that company that, you know, aligns with you. I also have a personal connection to an English class I once took. I think it was the first English class I took here for critical thinking. And we read Just Mercy, which is, I think it even got adapted to a movie if you guys saw that one. But it's a really awesome book. And at that time, I have since changed my major to biology, but at that time I wanted to become a lawyer. And the narrator of the book is a lawyer. And there was a point where he was talking, I think, Rosa Parks, and another leader of the civil rights era, and he was talking about, like, he was so excited for all these social justice issues, you know, like that he was going to fix single-handedly. He was going to be the one to change it all. And they were basically like, that's gonna make you pretty tired. But you can still do it. You just have to be strong. And, you know, picking content like that where people connect themselves to, you know, there's so many things in the world that young people or people in college, they want to change, but the acknowledgement that it's hard, but, you know, the personal strength is there, and fostering that strength is what is important.
Well, I myself feel most connected to the curriculum obviously, you see us up here, we're all so different. We're all so diverse, so the things that interest us, the things that motivate us when we're talking about our academics are all going to be different. So something that I really appreciate from professors and that in their curriculum that they share to us are things where they kind of let us have a bit of leeway with what we're studying, in terms of if it's a research paper, letting us choose what topics that we're going to be researching. Because chances are, if you're giving a student something that's not so open-ended, where it's very structured and they have to talk about this specific subject, chances are your group of 30 kids, they're not all going to love the subject and feel passionate and try their best on the assignment. But with my experience with Jenny Schroeder's class, our speech class, I loved it because she would let us choose our topics on what we wanted to give speeches on and what we wanted to research. So I myself am very interested in mental health advocacy, and so I would be able to research that and not only educate myself on something that I'm interested in, but share my interest with the rest of the class. So in terms of curriculum and feeling a sense of belonging, anything that allows us creativity and creative freedom and leeway in terms of what we're learning about, I think it really goes a long way in terms of having a student be passionate about what they're learning about and what they're putting out, the work that they are putting out. Thank you.
I think there's a lot of potential with each topic and subject on how to make it diverse, because making it diverse is what is really interesting to students. If it relates to you, if it relates to someone else, what I might find interesting is different from what Sam will find interesting, and I kind of agree with having the ability to choose your topic and subject, because different things make different things interesting. For me, I find it interesting not only with Asian culture, but with Hispanic cultures, with all cultures, because that's just me. And I'm a sociology major. I find it interesting. But I do like it and I find it interesting, which is the point. Making what you learn diverse is how to capture the student's attention, making it really about the students, like Hancock, really about the students, is how to make the students succeed. Making it about the students is how to make them succeed, because if the students feel like it's personalized, if the students feel that you have put an effort to make it about them, then I feel like they're going to love your class. They're going to do everything they can because they feel that you were trying. And that's the way I like it. I don't know if other students would like it like that, but if I find it interesting, I will do better. And I'm sure that goes for a lot of students. And I also like interacting with students. It's how you get more aware of other cultures. It's how you learn. It's how everyone learns, by interaction. Not many people like not interacting with people. I know I don't like interacting with too many people, but I still do it because it's an opportunity to learn about not only other people, but yourself as well. Thank you.
Well, I'm a STEM major, so I feel like we have the same like old boring books all the time. But from what I remember, I feel like I felt more like involved in the class when like everyone was like sharing their own thoughts on a certain book, just because I got to see it from their perspectives. So I would give my perspective, and then they would all have a different perspective because they all come from different backgrounds. So I feel like that helped me personally. And that's all I gotta say.
Thank you. So some of the conversations today I've mentioned have focused around deficit mindset, which in essence is when our biases create a predisposed decision that we've already made about somebody, for example, of what their abilities or their inabilities are. And some of those manifest as microaggressions or may manifest as microaggressions. Have you or have someone you know ever felt like either anyone in the Hancock community had that deficit mindset where you've maybe witnessed yourself or someone else experience where someone was focusing on what they can't do or making assumptions about what they can or can't do versus seeing the potential in that person? I know it's a loaded question, but I don't know if anyone wants to share about that.
I actually have a personal connection to someone who feels that they can't do certain things, or they have been unfortunate to be in this place, or born into this place, and they have certain things that they can only do. And I always try to bring them up. I always try to convince them that you are more than this. You are born here for a reason. You can do more with this. You can help other people even. That's why I think it's so important that we're so educated on this subject, because we have the power to help other students. Other students like one of my friends, or one of your coworkers, or one of your students. It's just so important that the students need to be aware that they are more than who they were born to be or who they were chosen to be or who they were viewed as. They just really need to know that when they're at Hancock, they're a Hancock student, which means everything that we have is going to be offered in a certain way that is not only available to a certain group of students, it's available to all students who at least qualify for the requirements. But I just hope for all students that they know that they were born here, or they were born anywhere, but they have the power to be who they want to be, and they can be whoever they want to be, and they can do whatever they want to do if they only put their mind to it. Thank you.
So, microaggressions and prejudice thoughts towards people, sometimes those are things that we can't control because perhaps that is just the environment that they have been used to, so their mind has developed a certain way of thinking. But what I love about coming here to Hancock is that you come here and you could step into a new environment. You don't have to think these prejudiced thoughts. You don't have to succumb to these microaggressions and stereotypes that are so prevalent in our society. Maybe it's a generational thing, or maybe it's a cultural thing. There's so much stigma, in the outside world, but I myself, I feel like Hancock is kind of like a safe haven in a way, because you come here and everyone's included. Like Ediana was saying, all of our resources are open to everyone. All the clubs, no one's going to shun you away just based on something that you cannot control. With my experience with certain professors, also my experience as a tutor at the resource center, I get students sent to me and their professor specifically says to them, look for a tutor that's going to accommodate to your bilingual needs. Look for a tutor that's going to accommodate to your disability. And so they have their best interests at mind, and in return, that's going to just offer more inclusion for everyone, all types of people. And so I really do appreciate this kind of mindset that Hancock is putting out to their students, and faculty does a great job of including everyone. And so I myself haven't been a target of microaggression, thankfully, thank God. But I know it's sometimes things that we cannot control. We cannot control other people's actions. But what I see, there's so much positivity, there's so much inclusion here at Hancock, and I really appreciate it with my personal experience. So thank you.
So I was going over the deficit mindset, and to be honest, I kind of expect someone to have a deficit mindset towards me because of my background or because of how I look. And like I said, I'm a strong believer in second chances. So it doesn't matter who a person is or where they come from. I'm always gonna give them that benefit of the doubt, or go based off how they talk or how they act. But like I said, I'd work in a program for a program called Rising Scholars for formerly and currently incarcerated students. And a couple of times students that are in our program have said that they were treated differently because they were formerly incarcerated, or because they were asking about Rising Scholars or the Biggie Club. Like, oh, you're okay, yeah, those people are up there in A building. And that's kind of discouraging. Like, that's kind of make us feel like outcasts. Like, it's bad enough that once we get released from incarceration, we feel it in regular society, but to feel it on this campus, that's I don't know, that kind of hits a little hard. But like I said, I'm not trying to sit here and bash Hancock because, the good definitely outweighs the bad. But at the same time, as the students are sitting here and speaking on their perspective or how it was for them, I think events like this are awesome because you hear from the students, and all the time we hear from counselors or instructors or different employees here at Hancock, but hearing from the students is what it's important. But how are you going to take it though? Like, are you just going to listen to it and it's going to come in one ear and out the other? Or you're going to kind of think like, okay, yeah, that was a motivating speech, or that really hit hard. But then once you leave the room, you're going to start thinking about what you're going to eat for dinner tonight. Like, these events aren't going to do anything if they just leave your mind right when you leave this building or leave this campus. And you guys have no idea how good it feels when I see a random person here at Hancock and say, hey, good morning. Like, to you, that might just be like a regular good morning, but to me, that's more than just a good morning. That's someone saying, hi, I welcome you to even walk past me. And it might be small to you, but it's huge to me. Thank you. Thank you for letting me share.
My major is in human services, and when you're over in Building C, which is where I kind of pitch a tent for most of my school, but most of my classmates are in recovery. And so when you look at that, that is one huge population, and we have a great human services, and it's the addiction studies. And we've got a lot of students that have so much to offer back through their own personal experience. And that's why your club is so fabulous. And, getting that started, but we see so much of what the community embraces, and the fact that we do have just a segment of society that is learning to go back out and be productive and to add and to give back. And Santa Maria is really a beautiful place that embraces and welcomes and has all the students back. Santa Maria loves our students. And they would love to see more action, more activities where we can join back in. I work with Serving Santa Maria. I've done it for 12 years now, or however long it's been going. And they keep asking me, when is Hancock College going to have them come help us paint underneath the bridge or help with the park? But they love it when we go out as a community, and I think a lot of that comes from what we're learning in our classes through our teachers, sharing their experiences and helping us to learn to be part of a volunteering community and finding ways to give back and to be productive in each little fashion that we've got. And so I find that we do have different things, and we have different clubs and things for everyone. And we've got ways to get good, productive people out working and feeling good about themselves. And I think that's huge. When you can leave here and feel good about your experience and be productive, then you've become helpful to yourself and to the rest of society. Thank you.
So in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, what do you think Allan Hancock College is doing well to support you in your academic goals and success? And if you have any suggestions, what can we do to improve?
Okay. Sorry, I have so much. Yeah. So with my personal experience and time, my brief time here at Hancock, it's been great. We have so many resources available, and something that. Sorry, let me just gather myself. So much. Okay. So like I mentioned before, I'm a mental health advocate. I'm not scared to say things like suicide is the #2 leading cause of death amongst college students. I'm not scared to say that a majority of students in college are living with a mental illness, not only just dealing with mental health struggles in general, but living with a diagnosed illness. And I'm not scared to say that, the resources that Hancock puts out, they are available to everyone. But how do we make these resources more pertainable to the students? How do we make it so that they don't feel so scared to come reach out for help? If we work together to achieve this kind of mindfulness, and by mindfulness, I'm talking about that, of course, first we need to acknowledge, in terms of diversity, what's going on, how people are different in every shapes and life, race, ethnicity. People are completely diverse, so we acknowledge this, and Hancock does a great job of doing this. But now there's a second step. We need to go a bit deeper into realizing that, like in ASBG, we do such a great job of putting on cultural celebrations such as Asian heritage celebrations and Hispanic heritage celebrations, which promote inclusivity because we're learning about the art and we're learning about the music and things that are just so welcoming. And but what about the things that are not so welcoming in terms of cultural barriers that we face? And I'm not just talking about practical barriers such as language barriers, financial stability, transportation. There are other things that are more hush-hush that maybe aren't so comfortable to talk about. For example, there's barriers such as identity crisis that so many college students deal with because we're at such a pivotal point in our lives. Who are we? What are we going to do? There's so much expected of us, but it's not so openly talked about, like, oh, what can I do to help you get to school, or how can I help you in a financial sense? There's so much substance abuse disorders that are happening with this generation just due to stress and due to how much we are exposed to certain things. And that also is a direct correlation to mental illness. There's cultural stigma stemming from the family unit in itself, which isn't really often talked about because we know here at Hancock, I just said, we're so welcoming, we're so inclusive, but where are these students coming from? Are they coming from an inclusive environment itself when they go back at home? So it could be kind of a tricky thing that we're dealing with here. And self-esteem, these expectations that we're having to live up to, especially in this day and age where we're so exposed to media and what we're supposed to be doing right and wrong in terms of our daily choices. So if we start acknowledging more common barriers that can definitely be subjected to underrepresented populations, that is going to lead to us being more mindful of the things that diversify us, and these things can uplift us. Like I said, something that makes me different can get me so many opportunities, but it can also hinder us when we come from a different background. So just acknowledging that, and then moving towards how we can guarantee a more realistic sense of equity and inclusion. So how the heck do we do this? We just start by starting the conversation. Start the uncomfortable conversation. Let's not punish students for putting their mental health at the top of their priorities. I have some statistics here. I don't want to bore you with statistics, but 6 out of 10 times, if you're dealing with a mental health issue, your grades are going to go down. And the irony is that if you take time to, slow down, take care of your mental well-being, maybe take some units off, take some time off of school, chances are there's some sort of punishment that is in direct correlation with it. You may be losing your scholarship. You may be losing your housing. And so just being more mindful that we're dealing with generational barriers, that the conversation it's barely starting, but there's still so much more to do. There's still so much more to be said, to think about, so much more research to go into it. And so if we just start by starting the uncomfortable conversation, being realistic in terms of diversity and equity, I think that it's going to lead to so much more success. And the bigger picture is that this is going to impact our workforce and our future quality of life. So it's, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but it's just something small that we can start with, just keeping an open mind, acknowledging it, and doing the step forward and making it into action. So thank you.
I agree with so much that was just said. Thank you for saying all of it. It actually touches on a lot of points that I had. I want to start off with saying the good things that I've seen at Hancock and how proud I am, because I also work here. I'm so proud to be a part of that. At one of the outreach events for Hancock I was working at, there was someone who came by and they were saying things like, wow, kids these days, huh? And I'm like, yeah, kids these days. And they're like, they want everything to be free. And I'm like, okay. But I started talking about our programs at Hancock, of course, and started giving, the whole speech about the promise and everything. And guess what? There's a lot more other free stuff we have here, too. We have the counseling services. We have food share. There are so many things. I'm so proud of basic needs and the fact that when a student comes up to me and they're like, I don't even know, I'm going to have to drop out, actually, because, I'm having a housing crisis. There's all these things going on. I can say to them, well, actually, we do have a retention specialist that you can talk to. Actually, we do have a basic needs program. You can talk to someone there. Actually, we have mental health counseling. You don't have to pay anything. You can just go to Building W and start the conversation with someone. So I'm proud of all those things. I'm proud that we have the STEM Center, Mesa STEM, where someone pointed it out the other day that one of the things I really love about Mesa STEM is that you can't be in it if both your parents have a bachelor's degree. Because we're talking about they want to help the students who don't have the advantages or the privileges that other students, so many of our students don't. So I'm really proud of all those things. Some things that I could see also benefiting student success academically is expanding the mental health counseling we have. During the summer, and now currently I believe, we have 1 in-person counselor and 2 online counselors that someone can see. So think about the number of students on our population and the amount of anxiety and other mental health issues that you really need to talk to a professional about. And a lot of people don't have insurance, a lot of people don't have access, so that makes the difference between someone dropping their classes and not returning to Hancock ever again to join the workforce or even more dire consequences. It's hard to be a student, and it's hard to be a student and a parent, and it's hard to be a student and a parent and work a part-time job or a full-time job. There are so many challenges facing our student population that go beyond just, well, you should probably see a tutor about that. You're not doing that great in stats, So there are so many of those things we can work on. Also, we do come from a very conservative area, and to be an LGBTQ plus student means that being on this campus can feel like a privilege at times because it's a haven from a lot of that. But that doesn't mean it's perfect because like I said before, it's only within the room that our club is having a meeting in that often they can feel comfortable. So while this may be one of the most accepting places in the town, in the city, and it doesn't mean it's perfect. And without saying from the top, from administration, from whatever it may be, all the time, all year round, not just during Pride Month, that we accept these students. We are here. We have the support. We're putting, our money where our mouth is, and we're adding acceptance to this group that has traditionally not been accepted, and we're really gonna do all those things. I think is very important.
So one of the good things that Hancock has done was start a program for formerly incarcerated students, thanks to Cheech. Like I said earlier, I'm formerly incarcerated, so I've been in and out of jails and institutions since I was 11 years old, and I struggled with substance abuse and with this lifestyle and this lifestyle that I was used to. And so after getting out of prison this last time, I wanted to do something different. And I didn't want to go back to prison. I didn't want to fall back into drugs. And I definitely didn't want to go back to the same neighborhood. So I know that I had to do something different. And I remembered I was collecting unemployment because I was laid off. I was working at a landscaping company, and so I was collecting unemployment. And my sister, she graduated here with her associates, and she's pursuing her bachelor's. And she had asked me like, "Hey, what are you gonna do once this money runs out?" And I just told her like, "I don't know. I'm getting paid to stay home. I'm just gonna stay home. I guess I'll cross that bridge once I get there." But she had told me something that stood in the back of my head. She said, "No matter what, time is gonna pass by, so you might as well be doing something while it passes by." And she actually got me to enroll her and my wife, Esmeralda Del Rio, another student mentor and Rising Scholars. They helped me do the application because I'm not too familiar with. I wasn't too familiar with computers, and I enrolled, and then I enrolled into EOPS, and I got directed straight to Rising Scholars, and that's when I met Cheech Raygoza and Ralphie Valdivinos. And going on my second year here at Hancock, like this, I love being a college student, and I love being a Hancock student even more. And I never thought that I would have this option. I was born and raised here in Santa Maria, and I would always pass by Hancock thinking as a kid or as in high school, thinking that it'd be awesome to go to school there. But I never thought that it was an option for me. And so, being a full-time student and working in this program, like it's awesome. And everyone that I run into, especially from my neighborhood, I always tell them about Hancock, about the different programs and resources that are offered. And I'm just very grateful for the people here at Hancock, for the programs, for the different departments. And furthering my education was the best decision of my life. Thank you.
Well, we can't thank you enough for taking your Friday afternoon, your weekend, to spend some time with us. That was really great. Just thank you so much for bringing those perspectives. Thank you for everyone for hanging out again with us all day today. Thank you to my co-chairs, Stephen and Anna, and all of our presenters. We have so much knowledge in-house that we should be doing these things more often because we have so many brilliant people on this campus and so many brilliant students that we should be doing these things all the time. So thank you. Do you want to say anything, Anna?
So I want to really thank the students because you help inform our perspective. Because we can only understand your struggles when you're sharing your stories with us. And so it helps us inform as we create and co-create ourselves and understand this complex world and be able to better support you and assist you as you go on your academic journey. So I really thank you guys for your time and for being here, and for all of my colleagues and everybody on campus that stayed until 4 right now. Thank you so much. I really hope that you guys enjoy as much as I enjoyed the presentations. I wish I could have been in all of them, but I couldn't. We were running all over the place. But definitely thank you to the task force, for the institution, administration that really support us to get this going, and everyone who cooperated so that we can put this together. And let's hope that this is not just a one-time thing, and that we can move forward and continue expanding and unpacking this a little bit more so that we can support our students and have a more diverse and also inclusive environment where we all come together despite the differences that we might have, but ultimately we have more similarities than anything. Thank you.
I just wanted to urge the students to urge other peers and students to, if there's something we could be doing better, we do look for the students to guide us, because you're the eyes and ears and you're having the experience. So we need to know what we need to do better. So please reach out to any of us and say, hey, this is what we need, and then we'll help you navigate the system to get it done. So when you're asked these types of questions, we want to know what we could do better. We're happy to know that we're doing some stuff really great. We also know that there's space to grow. But don't hesitate. If you leave here and go, man, I should have brought that up, just, come find us and let us know, so we can make this a better experience. And it's a continuous growth that we need to make as an institution. Everything's always changing. Language is changing and culture is changing. Practice and barriers are changing and evolving. So we need help, and we need it from the students. So please know we serve you. We're here for you. Without you, we wouldn't have jobs. We wouldn't be here. We all work for you. So don't forget that. We all work for you. And so let us know what we could be doing better. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.